Welcome to the CHCH Newsmakers podcast. I'm Rick Zamprin. If it's making news in Hamilton, Halton, and Niagara, across Canada or around the world, you'll find it on Newsmakers. A longtime Hamilton businessman has launched a new website and social media channels to, quote, champion fiscal accountability and growth in Hamilton. It's called thrivehamilton.ca, and the person behind it is Peter Turkstra, who joins me on Newsmakers. Peter, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and thanks for having me.
Why did you launch thrive.ca?
Well, I run a 75-year-old family business with 11 branches, of which 4 are in Hamilton. And the biggest threat to my business and to my staff is actually the way that the city of Hamilton is being run. I'm not a political person at all. I have no political aspirations. But when taxes go up 23%, I couldn't possibly give raises or increases quick enough, and it wouldn't even be money that they could spend and support local business. It's going right to the city of Hamilton. So I guess I'm frustrated enough that I realize that traditional media isn't covering these topics, and if they are, the word isn't getting out. So it's really more of a platform so that people can listen and perhaps get more informed on the quality of the candidates. And my dream would be that more people get out and vote. And I'm guilty of that too. I never took municipal elections particularly seriously, but what we're witnessing now is the outcome when you don't, and you end up with people in charge who don't have the skills.
I was going to say it's funny, but it's not necessarily funny because municipal government controls maybe the most important part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's garbage collection or municipal taxes, property taxes, and it has the lowest voter turnout of the 3 major elections, municipal, federal, and provincial. What kind of feedback have you already heard? You've launched this a few weeks ago. What are some of the things you're hearing?
Well, for one, it's taking off, and it's also clear that my frustration or our frustration is really widespread. I chose to focus really on accountability and transparency and the budget, if you think of it that way, because everything else falls under that. All the projects, all the mismanagement, all the opportunity is how you manage a business. And before people say, oh, you're a businessman, government isn't business, well, you still have to live within your means and how you're going to do them. So that's kind of how I got about going after that. But what's happening is that people are reaching out to me in spades with private messages, phone calls, tracking me down to tell me about their particular area. So what's coming out is the issues with the drug use, people's opinions on the police, people's opinions on the upcoming taxes. And so far, I would say that the response has been 100% thumbs up. So I was kind of expecting to be with this wave of negativity, but I think that there's so many people that are disappointed that they're coming forward and they're reaching out to me. And it's kind of frustrating because I can't fix their problems. Mm-hmm. All I can do is act as a platform to get that message through.
You're the conduit, or this platform is the conduit for people to flood in information, feedback, ideas, and then you will bring that to politicians or just make it widely available to those who are eventually going to vote.
It's interesting. I started by saying, how does this work? Because I'm not a politician. And so I called the clerk's office for the electric thing. They've got a person, and she was lovely, and she told me the rules. And then I went on GoDaddy and found a domain name, and then I made a very small website, then opened an Instagram, then opened a social media. And then I wrote to all the councillors that are currently sitting today and the mayor directly, personally, and invited them to participate in Thrive. Not unexpectedly, I think that some of them are reluctant. They don't want to talk or speak about their track record. But now what's happening is I formally invited them to subscribe, and then what I'm going to be doing is reposting information that's fact-based, that deals with the issues of transparency, like the hack and not having financial statements since 2022 that are audited, to the budget, to some of the failed projects, and also, I think, we call it Thrive on purpose. We believe there's a huge opportunity here. So the opportunity is to turn the city around, which is going to take leadership. So we're going to be asking them to engage. If they have intelligent information that they post, I will repost it the way a media station would. But as we get closer, I'm also going to ask very directed questions to them and ask them to answer. Like a simple question would be, are you committed to getting the staff back to work? The rest of us, COVID is in the rearview mirror. They're working 1 day a week, then 2 days a week.
You're talking in office.
In office folks. So if you were to go with a set of plans or whatever you're to do, you'd often be greeted by a security guard saying, leave it to me and I'll put it on their desk. They'll be here next Wednesday. It just doesn't work. So I will be asking very pointed questions, and I'll be asking it to all of them. In fact, I looked it up, and of all the officials and the mayor, there's not actually only one of them that I've ever met in person. So it's not like I have any favorites. I'm kind of frustrated with all of them. Now, the candidates that are running, I think we should hold them accountable. I think that they should declare what they're going to run on, not dogma, not rhetoric, but what they really are going to do, so that we can look back and then hold them accountable.
We should make it clear to those who are going to be watching and listening to this podcast this is not a partisan platform. You just want what is best for the city.
I'd say, if anything, it appears to me, and I'm not political, that the partisan packing together and voting the same way and wiping out those who want to have a different voice has not been effective in Hamilton. We've ended up with a very divided city. We've ended up with major issues, from safety to drug use to all the ones that all cities have. But when we're compared to other cities in some recent reports, we often come in last or next to last with transparency. And I'm not a politician, but democracy requires transparency. You are accountable to your people. If you run to be an elected official, presumably you did it because you believe in servant leadership and you're serving your constituents. It strikes me we have the exact opposite dynamic now. And anytime anybody wants to speak up and have a different view of it, it sounds like they're shouted down. So this is not political at all.
From a business perspective, you're a longtime Hamilton businessman, philanthropist. You've given a lot of your money to foundations and charities as well. From a business perspective, the city of Hamilton, at the end of the day, is a business. Money's coming in, money's going out, projects have to be done and whatnot. There's housekeeping matters to take care of. Is this a new problem, or is this something you have seen for a long, long time?
Well, I actually grew up in Montreal, so go Habs go. And I moved here in 1996, and I lived with my wife, Karen, who was a school board trustee for 8 years in Greensville, and raised our children, and so Hamilton is now home. I think, like many of us that live in places like Dundas or Greensville or Waterdown, you don't go to downtown Hamilton particularly often. I now reside in Ancaster, which is lovely, and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
The question is, how long has this been going on for? You've been in the business realm.
It's been getting worse.
Okay.
So my father, Carl, and my mom, Kate, founded a Insight Foundation for the Arts, because they came from New York City, and they believed that a real city needed to have arts and culture, not just medical systems. And they were absolutely lovely. Rest in peace. And we kind of took that on from there. And it's... I remember it. I remember how excited he was when the Philharmonic was turning around, and the art gallery, and these downtown initiatives. And he was very involved with the arts, and Hamilton is Steel, and turning it around, which then led to people wanting to live here and more wonderful restaurants and turning the city around. And then I'd say something happened about 8 to 10 years ago where the dynamics changed in terms of the needs, and then I'd say, but in the last 4 years, it's where it's at the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. But yes, part of that's just driven by the general decline in the drug use and the safety issues, but also it's just, if you increase your taxes by 23% to your ratepayers, while eating into your reserves, I don't think a lot of ratepayers or taxpayers understand that would have been a lot higher, but our mayor used her strong mayor powers to pick a number. But that means it's hidden for the year after the year after. And that is really, really scary, because I think you're going to see businesses go bankrupt because we cannot afford an increase that doesn't keep track with any norms of inflation or population growth.
Yeah, the can has been kicked down the road a couple of times now. There was not that long ago where we had 0% tax increases in the municipality. Was that a mistake back then? Was there no forward thinking?
Well, I'd put it this way. It sounds like in the last 4 years we've increased our budgets by $100 million a year or more, maybe as high as 150. We've lost control over the finances because we don't have audited statements. We had the famous hack, which is the excuse used for everything. And it's just it's horrifying to think that we have these hidden taxes. At the same time, they've hired 1,000 people. And in studies, we have many more people as a percentage that are supervisors versus worker bees. Well, in a family business, you can have a president or an owner, you can have a vice president of finance, but you don't have all of these high-priced folks. We just can't afford it. And I was speaking with one person in particular who said to me, it's just a shame that the government won't let us borrow. To which my answer was, oh my goodness, thank goodness they don't, because you'd have a $2 billion debt that we'd be trying to finance. Right. So they're totally out of control. And the last 4 years is the one that really just tipped me over the edge. Yeah.
It's also against the law, so to speak, for lack of a better term, to be in the red in terms of municipality. You have to balance the budget. You can't have an unbalanced budget. When you're talking to other business people, and not necessarily in Hamilton, but they could be from Burlington or other parts of the province or around the world, what's their perception of doing business in Hamilton?
I'd say that we'd probably be viewed as the city of no. I mean, I have a branch in Brantford, and you only have to go down the highway to see all these shiny new chocolate factories and this opportunity that could have been in Hamilton that isn't. If you're in the development side of the world, we have some councillors that literally don't believe any housing should be built by anybody other than the city of Hamilton. So we have some of this dogma-driven thing that drives people away. And we talk at a federal level about this money that's left the country and this flow of capital. Well, if you don't bring the capital into the city and you argue for years about where your Ticats Stadium is going to be and one, missed project after the next, it sends a message that it's not competent. Now, there are also a lot of other incompetent municipalities. So this is probably general. A lot of people who are watching, not in Hamilton, will say, well, I have that as well. And I also need to say, there are also some incredible Hamilton employees. So I see this as more of a governance and a leadership issue than I do the actual physical employees. Employees and what they do every day is typically governed by their leadership. And if their leadership says, come to work 1 day a week, and that's fine because we decided, our HR manager did, well, then that's what they're going to do. You can't blame that for that. Yeah. I'd say, hoo-hoo. But it doesn't work for us. They're customers.
Taxpayers. Yeah.
And so I won't apologize for it. All of those in business have to ask our customers what they want. And if we don't deliver, we don't get to survive. Mm-hmm.
You've launched this website thing, or thrivehamilton.ca. It's asking people to submit their, ideas and I guess vent. I'm sure some people are venting as well to have that accountability, have that transparency, which speaks to me, because you've launched that, you don't think we're at the point of no return. But how close are we in terms of having a city and being ratepayers where we cannot afford that municipal tax bill?
Well, we need to cut. In my business, my employees didn't get a pay increase last year. They haven't had one this year. Mm-hmm. And they need to make cuts. They need to be more efficient, and then based on that, they should be able to cut their budget. They also have to have a situation where the level of professionalism is there so their projects are executed on time and are also efficient, which it appears that they're not. So they're failing in all those categories. I have watched leaders turn around companies, and I've watched leaders turn around the whole view of the way their countries run or provincially. So I do think it can be done, but it will be done by holding staff at the senior level accountable. But let's not forget, we went through a hack. It appears very few consequences. We didn't follow some rules to get the insurance. Didn't get the insurance money. Very few consequences. Did the flat roof Chinese, a horrifying project. No consequences. Went and hired staff rather than outsourcing for those jobs. No consequences. Put a process in place to tax vacant units and hired tons of people. No consequences. Are arguing now that they want to put in this rainwater tax, which could cripple businesses, and is another sneaky tax on residents. They decided to punt it till after the election because it's not popular. So there aren't any consequences right now. So what I'm hoping is that this frustration will lead to people saying, I'm going to get educated and choose candidates this next time around, and I'm going to go to the voters' box and we're going to vote in candidates based on their pedigree, not their rhetoric, and whether or not they can use a calculator, along with other important things which we all know need to happen in a city.
The consequences are we're paying more in property tax at the end of the day. Right, because all these projects are being done, or millions of dollars are being spent to recoup all the documents or all the things that had to happen after the hack, and at the end of the day, we're stuck with the bill.
we're not only stuck with the bill, but when they come out and they say the 3.8% is $209, well, they're using a relatively low-cost home in Hamilton, the median.
The average household, yeah.
So most people look at that and say, well, then why was my bill up $1,000? So I have my daughter and her husband now live in our old house in Greensville, and if they get $1,000 increase, that is paid in after-tax dollars. So that means that the next after-tax $1,000 that they have is just to give to the city of Hamilton for no new service. And it's very clear from the people reaching out that nobody appears to be happy with the level of service. So the level of service has declined while the cost of it has gone up. And if indeed these reserves have all been butchered into, and it's coming the year and the year after, and we end up with a 35% increase over a 4 or 5 year period, it's just not sustainable. And I'm going to argue it's what's caused lack of affordability, which they ran on. They ran on affordability, and it's driven poverty directly. You only have to look at the scenario in Hamilton versus 12 years ago and say that was not caused by the taxpayers. Right. That was not caused by the restaurants. That was not caused by the builders. That was caused by the mismanagement of the city, which has a very tricky problem. But what they've done hasn't worked, has it? So it's time to try something different.
Interesting that you mentioned services being cut. And that would be, I think, is the overarching kind of response of, if we get rid of city staff, if we trim the budget, services are going to be impacted. What do you say to that?
Oh, it's their standard thing. I've had in my career at Terkstra in 2009, I had to, cut 60 people. This time around, by the way, so far we haven't had a massive layoff because I was committed to my employees, to my staff. So I get that notion that you don't want to eat into your staff. But is it not fair to ask the question, how did we end up with 1,000 new ones? And why do some of them make $200,000 to $250,000 a year? Why did we create entire new departments that didn't exist before? And when we did create those departments, did anybody do a cost benefit? So for instance, on that vacant unit tax, where we hired the people to collect the money, to send letters to little old ladies who didn't even know how to fill in the paperwork, who then got the bill and paid it. It's horrifying. And then as somebody say, well, what did that cost us, and how many actual vacant units paid, and how much did we make? These are just intelligent discussions I would think that a councillor and the mayor would want to know the answer to. And if they've made a mistake, and Lord knows I've made enough in business, and we all do in business, you'd backtrack on it, and you'd make changes. But between attrition and other vehicles, it doesn't have to be an argument that it happens overnight.
Right.
But is it not fair to ask the question, why did we hire 1,000 people? And how could that be related to population growth? Can't prove it. How? And the analysis isn't there. And while I respect traditional media, the truth is the traditional media doesn't have the resources anymore to do the kind of investigative follow-up that you'd want, to really hold them accountable, to really nail them to the wall. It's kind of pretty laissez-faire. So they do report on these things, but we won't know. But I do think that the people that are running as new people running to be an elected official will probably bring some of the data to light.
You spoke of opportunities early on in our conversation. Yeah. What do you think is some of the biggest opportunities in this city to move us forward?
Well, our location is slamming. It's fantastic. I mean, we have a lot of the key ingredients that people would kill for. We have a relatively compact downtown, if we can deal with some of the issues that we have, and safety and all the rest. We have a thriving foodie community. We have a Philharmonic. We have the arts. We have Hamilton Pride. We have the Tiger Cats. We now have this new stadium, which some people were against, or the venue, with Live Nation. And my goodness, how dangerous is it that we're getting these wonderful artists coming and filling our hotels, right, and filling our restaurants and spilling over to the Tim Hortons, who, by the way, don't get the employees who aren't going to work. So it's part of this economic driver. So I believe in the multiplier effect, which is when you do something creative and you bring a new form of revenue, whatever it is, it'll have trickle-down effects. In my world, I buy a new truck, a lot of people benefit. In the city's world, when a Live Nation takes off and we get all these shows, it's wonderful for the ratepayers, it's opportunity for all the people who work there, and then for all the restaurants and everything downstream. But the flip side is a deceleration effect, where we've had restaurants close because their employees don't feel safe. or as you mentioned, people who said, I'm not going to Hamilton because I'll go to the neighboring area.
Right.
And that is really discouraging. And that is a function of the behavior and the rhetoric from council and the mayor over the last 12 years. So several of them. It's not just the current ones. But it's palpable. You feel it. So we should be incredibly proud of our Tiger Cats and everything that we have. And instead, we're kind of stuck. I kind of say, like, you look at Cuba and say, Cuba has all this opportunity, but why is it what it is? Well, the answer isn't to become, American, but the answer is it could be a lot better than it is. We'd all agree. Yeah. So I think with some really strong leadership and a change in the balance, even if it's not all incredibly talented elected officials, those who can lead the way, and I don't see that in the current council at all.
And we had, I would say, a pretty substantial change in terms of the people at City Council compared, this term compared to the previous term, because there was, whether it was a change election or not, there was certain pieces that did not return. Yet the situation seems to be the same. Are we attracting the best quality potential politicians to the table? That's $1 million question.
I only know one of them personally that I've met. I think that I've seen some of the names that are going to be running, and they appear that they have a much more robust background. In the last year, I've been involved in some advocacy over the HST battle with how homes and stuff, and I've had the opportunity to speak to many of the councillors. And it was crazy. So right now, the City of Hamilton has a $500 million surplus of development charges that it's never spent. So think of it that way. They charged people this money and it's just sitting in the bank. One of the councillors said to me, it's actually $535 million. And I said, oh, okay, so new homeowners have paid $535 million that you haven't spent. And her answer was, no, I need $9.8 billion. And I said, well, can you explain that, councillor? And she said, well, I have pipes in my neighborhood from 1870 and they're bursting and somebody's got to pay for them. And I said, well, with respect, councillor, I know one thing. If you have pipes bursting in your community from 1870, you've been collecting taxes since 1870. So the real question is, what did you do with the money? What did you do with those reserves? And how have you managed it? And her answer was, oh, that's an interesting perspective. So I think, like our former prime minister who said, the budget takes care of itself, I think some of them don't even believe that fiscal accountability is part of their job description. I think they want to go to smile cookie events and they want to go to openings with a shovel using somebody else's money, but they don't understand that every dollar they spend is our money. I've got 4 branches with my local employees. It's their money. Yeah. My customers, it's our money. And when we do that, they tend to come back and say, oh, you sound like a business person. It's too complicated for you. Well, it's not. Businesses are complicated too. But guess what? We have to react or we lose our customers.
Right. What do you hope to hear from those who are running? And I'm talking about whether it's the mayor or councillors. And what do you think you're going to hear?
I'll answer with I think. I think that I hope that they all participate. I believe that some will choose not to, in the same way that in certain provincial and federal elections lately there have been fewer debates. Right. I think that some will just not engage at all. I'm actually restricting what I'm going to be posting to fiscal accountability, transparency, and the budget, because I'm trying not to go down the ballywig of LRT, two-way streets, and all the rest. They fall like it does in a business. I have trucks, I have people, I have all that stuff. The decisions have to be made at the council level and the staff level. But I'm hoping that the new candidates are really going to focus on that. And those who've reached out to me are clearly focusing on it, because people are furious that their taxes went up 23%. And they're behaving as if they had no choice and we should say, thank you, can I have another? So I am sensing it. It's palpable. People are upset. Whether that will drive them to change, I don't know, because a lot of people in Hamilton seem to vote on name recognition alone. If you're in power, if you were elected last time, you'll probably get in. And that's kind of that's true of trustees as well, too, by the way. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, name recognition is, in any municipal election, not just in Hamilton, goes a long way in terms of that individual getting reelected because the person's familiar with their name. Oh, I know that person, I'll vote for them again.
And I think that I'm sure that some of them are doing wonderful work within their constituency and will have great Facebook pages and they'll preach their dogma over and over again, like watching CNN or Fox. and that's the world they're in, and the people that have voted for them in the past will love them no matter what they do. But I'm hoping that we hold their track records of all the councillors. I'm not picking on any of them. I really want to hold them to account. But there are 5 or 6 councillors that are currently elected who have really tried to make a difference with the budget and have really tried to fight back, but they get shouted down by a majority who don't seem to care, and they get, I'd say, put down by the use of strong mayor powers, which I don't think was the original intent of strong mayor powers, but that's the dynamic that seems to be there. So there's actually infighting within the councillors, right? So if I was to think of any of us in business, we'd have an executive team. They wouldn't be infighting. We'd all be leading with our employees and our wonderful people who work with us, providing excellent services to our customers. And again, I think that there are many wonderful City of Hamilton employees. So I actually feel for some of them, because I'm sure it can't be easy working in this dysfunction. It can't be.
Yeah. What's your hope for Hamilton? Where do you see this city going if things go according to plan and we get it right?
Well, I think for sure we have to harness what's been going on downtown, because at the end of the day, we all remember Vancouver had a drug problem in a wonderful city, but that area was suffering in San Francisco. So we have to get a handle on on what we do with the homelessness issue, as well as the drug use issue and the injection sites and all those complicated matters. If we can get a handle on that, then we have these wonderful restaurants, and we also need to make some changes on the development charges, which I'm hoping is underway, if Hamilton's competent about it, to bring down affordability, or to raise it so it's more affordable for people. Because right now the rents are too high, and because we're the land of no, with some councillors who basically try and block everything all the time, we have less inventory. And if you want a recipe for higher priced condos and higher priced houses, make the inventory less. But the crazy part is the City of Hamilton has chosen to do that, and their revenues from development charges may be off 70, 80%, because people can't afford to pay that price in Hamilton. It might work in Toronto, but it's not going to work in Hamilton. So we need a thriving community, and that's why the word thrive came. But to me, that's balance. And that doesn't mean as a business person you don't take care of the disadvantaged. Yeah. But I'll argue there's nothing more aggressive for the disadvantaged financially than high rent, high property taxes, which, by the way, do end up in the rents, and high utilities. So we've hammered these poor folks. So if we can get Hamilton to thrive again, we'll get better employment. And employment is a key to this. Employment is what brings people pride. We have these wonderful new immigrants coming to Canada. What are they here for? Opportunity. What will opportunity give them? Money in their pocket. What does that give them? Options. Right? That's how you get out of this hole. You don't get out of this hole by throwing more hospital beds. You get out of this issue by allowing for opportunity. And unfortunately, we're failing in that area.
Come Election Day, October 26th, I know there's advance polls as well, but how big of an impact do you think thrivehamilton.ca will have on those who are civically engaged, so they know what's going on? They're going to be reading messages and feedback and some of the things that you're posting. How big of an impact do you think this is going to have?
It's a hard one to measure. I got into this to be effective. One thing I'm not doing is I don't want to waste my time, right?
Yes.
I'm technically retired. I have an executive team at a great company. I really want to be effective, but I've had some councillors reach out to me, because I didn't know this, that elections could be won by 7 or 10 votes at the municipal level. So I haven't determined any winners yet, but I'm hoping that we're going to have some strong candidates come forward. This will be a platform to allow them to at least balance off versus the pure name recognition aspect. We might end up with a really good battle at the mayoral level between 3 or 4 quality candidates. And then I hope that at the end, it might help people make the right decision. But at a minimum, if they're able to watch this, they might get more educated. I'm finding that a lot of people had no idea what a reserve was, and that the tax increase isn't 3.8, but it's a manipulated 3.8. And when I'm able to explain that to somebody, that means that there might be 10% buried for next year unless they cut, and they don't appear that they want to cut, their eyes just pop open.
Right.
So
because that's the number that gets your attention.
Pocketbook gets their attention. Yeah. And as I mentioned, it's after-tax dollars. So the example I used in a recent speech was, if a bagel store gets a $400 increase in property taxes, how many more bagels do they have to sell to pay for that one line item? Well, at the same time, if they get an increase on water taxes, so are we going to have some of them close? Will we see businesses on Lock Street, in Dundas, in Waterdown close because they can't do it? And as I'm not shy to tell people, 75 years in business, my biggest risk is not the box stores, proper competition, even the tariffs, as awful as they are, the economy. The biggest risk to my business at Trickster Lumber, 75 years, and it keeps me awake at night, is the city of Hamilton. And I think that's a pretty scary thing to say, right? So I need for it. So otherwise I wouldn't have gotten out of bed and said, I'm going to go become a sort of activist, but I'm really seeing myself as more of a advocate of democracy and providing a platform for balanced, and I'm going to make sure that it's professional, that it's fact-based, and low on rhetoric as much as I can. Right. And then I kind of believe in Gestalt. The people that watch and listen will make their own minds up. It's not for me to tell them. I'm hoping that they're going to see through some of the stuff that we've been told.
And you didn't get in this to get plaudits from the public, but I'm sure some people have probably reached out to say, hey, thanks for providing this, because I did not know.
It's been kind of overwhelming.
Really, eh?
Yeah, it's been kind of overwhelming, the support. When I called the clerk's office, I said, do I have to become a third-party advertiser? And she said, who are you? And I said, it's just me. And I chose, by the way, not to have a formal board with secretaries and all that, because if I did, I'd have to bounce everything through them, which would be slow. So it's just me. Right. But people are reaching out and they're saying, can I give you money? Can I give you money to amplify the message? And I said, well, maybe I'll get to that. And if I do, I'll go, which takes about a day, and become a third-party advertiser. I could boost things. I could have signs on the highway. I can do whatever I wanted as an individual. But right now I haven't. But they've been reaching out and saying, how do I help you? In the short term, my answer's simple. Share it. Instagram, Thrive. Thrive period Hamilton on Instagram, and Thrive space Hamilton on Facebook. I'm learning all this new millennial stuff and how to use all the stuff, how to do mentions and collaborations and all this stuff. But it's how it works now. Yeah. So the actual website is really more of a placeholder that describes the issue. The debate is going to happen on social media. And I'll be reposting, and through this wonderful avenue called podcasts and people making threads and videos, it won't just simply be articles reposting, because as you know, with the rules in Canada with the internet, it's kind of hard to repost media stuff. Right. Yes. But the actual people discussing between themselves, it's just there. It's going to be a platform. Where it goes and how many people, I don't know. I've only had it in place 2 weeks, so I don't know. But the feedback, frustration is there. Yes. Whether frustration will lead people to change their behavior is interesting question, and then whether they change their behavior and get to the polls is critical. So as we get closer, I think part of what I'll know if I've had an impact is whether or not we have more people going to the polls, and whether or not we have some changes in some areas where it was just totally taken for granted. Yeah. And we're seeing that in the U.S. politics now, right? People said, they always voted this way, red or blue or whatever, and then you're seeing that, oh my goodness, things can change. And we've seen at the provincial level some candidates from different parties get into Hamilton that traditionally would have never had a chance. Yeah. So there's something bubbling there. And again, I'm not political, I'm not picking a party, and I'm not even sure if a lot of the people running for council are really part of a party the same way. They're running on their platform. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a business person. I just want a better Hamilton. And quite frankly, in a discussion with the mayor last year, I said, it's really gone downhill. It sucks. And she was very defensive about it. And I said, well, you're down there. You see it. It's hard it's fact. So maybe why it's resonating is because these issues are real. This isn't rhetoric saying we have a problem with drug use, or we have a problem with break-ins, or we have a problem with enforcement of the law. It's real, it's fact, and the degree to which it's impacting everybody's life has accelerated, and the degree right now that it's impacted the viability of restaurants and businesses downtown is so very sad. And that should be their top priority, is their ratepayers and their taxpayers. So I just think we need a lot of change.
I can ask you a what-if question.
Yeah.
What, and you won't have the 100% answer to it, but you might have this in the back of your mind. What if, you launch this website, people offer feedback, but nothing much changes in the terms of the personnel in the Hamilton Council chambers? Will you, years from now, say, you know what, maybe I should be a politician. Maybe my ideas are worth something and people will listen to me and I'll run for council or mayor?
Well, if you knew how many people have reached out and said, I love your videos, because I started them a year ago, when are you going to be mayor? And my answer is no. My wife was a school board trustee in Hamilton for 8 years when they had to close schools and open schools because the previous folks had punted everything forward and she had to deal with it. And it was very fulfilling for her, but also very challenging. I would be divorced because she said, I do not have the temperament for it.
Yeah.
I think most of us who work really hard and get up every day to do better, to do a better job for our community, for our friends, for our family, are very frustrated. And I don't think I'd have the stamina for sitting in these meetings and kind of twiddling thumbs and not getting projects done. I do know that I would hold senior staff accountable and there would have been changes on my guard if I were in power, but I can't be because I wouldn't be able to do it. There is an art to being in public service, and Absolutely. I get that. Yeah. We can't all come in, like Doge in the States and say, and this is not what I'm about. I mean, my dad and my mom founded Insight. My wife and I have 2 separate foundations that support 37 to 50 charities in downtown Hamilton, and the need is staggering. We can't keep up. In one of the calls I had last year with the mayor, I said, we just wrote a check yesterday. It was our biannual check, and it was a pretty big one, and I said it was to 37 charities, and I said, and Mayor, it's not enough. And what more can you expect me to do? You're killing my business, which means you're going to kill the philanthropists, but at a time where you've never needed the philanthropists more, whether it's the people doing hospitals, and I don't tend to do hospitals. Yeah. My wife and I tend to do food insecurity, homeless shelters, all the kind of things, nurse practitioners out in downtown Hamilton. We're keenly committed to that. But we can't keep up with the increase in demand. But back to your question, long answer, I just wouldn't have the temperament for it. And that is why I think we end up with some folks in there who have a tough time making the hard decisions because it attracts people where it'll be the best job they ever had because they didn't have a lot of prior. I have a tendency when I'm going to have a discussion with somebody to look up LinkedIn, not because it's a pure measure, but just to say, what did you do before you were councillor?
Right.
Were you a doctor? Were you a nurse? Were you what did you do? And it's amazing how the pattern in Hamilton is often nonprofit, ran for something, elected official. And in some of those cases, then elected official for years and years and years.
Right.
And that hasn't proven to bring the skills to that job that you would have if you had a proper board of directors, right? Because again, council shouldn't be telling people what to do, but they should have their fingers on it and they should hold staff accountable, and they're all about governance and transparency. And in that regard, the current council is an F-, and you don't need me to say that. Google it on transparency versus other ones, and I think we came in last or second to last in the whole country. To which we answered, well, it's because of the hack. Well, Turkster Lumber was hacked by Russians. Just so you know, I could tell people. They got into our system, and it was a terrible day. I got a call from my president, John, saying, Peter, are you sitting down? And I said, what? He says, we're down. We were hacked. Somebody got into our system. So I said, oh, this could be my worst day ever. With 3,500 accounts, they're not all going to come rushing with their invoices. Like it could bankrupt me. And, have we heard yet what it's going to cost? And he said, no, not yet. And he said, but the good news is we're in the cloud. We're down for 3 hours as an abundance of caution because our servers are in California. We moved that 6 months ago because the world is an awful place, and Hamilton's an example when it comes to hacks. Yeah. And all of our email is in Microsoft 365 in the cloud. So they managed to take down our truss manufacturing plant fully for about 2 days and then limping for about a week until we rebuilt it.
Wow.
And if you were to ask me, how many staff do we have in IT? At Turkster Lumber, we have about 300 total employees. The answer is 0.
Wow.
We outsourced it to professionals. We outsourced it to people who came up with a plan. We implemented the plan. We were hacked. We didn't give them a nickel. And we were back up and running, and our customers were down for 3 hours.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Not impressive. It's our job.
Right.
It's our job to protect our assets.
Yeah.
It's our job when we buy things to use discipline to make sure we buy the right quality products and so forth. It's our job to support local. It's our job to support the communities where we work. These notions seem lost on a lot of the current folks.
Wow. Well, I appreciate the insight, the analysis of what you're trying to do. I think a lot of people will be engaged. I think that's, at the end of the day, what you want to have happen. Continued success with this project. Thanks for contributing from a philanthropic standpoint, and congrats on an awesome career that it's still kind of going to this day. Well,
I appreciate that, Rick. This is the wildest experiment I've ever done. From sitting
Are you having fun?
I'm having fun. My wife's finding that when the phone calls happen at 4:30, and when you get into this kind of thing, you will be contacted more likely by the activists who really want to vent.
Right.
And so I'm having to actually kind of put controls in place for my own quality of life. But to sit there on GoDaddy and learn it. And choose a domain name, and then choose the email, and then get the messaging to work, and then to wake up and post one video and immediately have 170 followers, and every time we post one, another 100 people follow, and then they engage, and and it's all been so positive so far, is something that I couldn't have predicted. And I just don't know, but I have to do it. I don't know what's in me. I call it angry Dutch mode. But
I'll let you say that.
I have to try and make a difference. Like I have to try. And if I fail, I don't think that helping educate people can go wrong. Yeah. So if I don't make a difference, I wasted a few months.
Well said. All right. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Rick.
Best of luck going forward.
All right. Thanks.
All right. And that is a wrap for the Newsmakers podcast. Big thank you to the all-star cast behind the scenes. If you like today's episode, click the thumbs up, hit subscribe. You can leave a comment as well. Catch the Newsmakers podcast on chch.com/podcasts and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.